Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Bear Experiment podcast. I'm your host, Monica Clavijo, and today I'm honored to sit with someone whose life bridges the worlds of achievement, adversity, and awakening, Eron Zehavi. Eron is a multifaceted entrepreneur, speaker, coach, and the founder of Soultivation, a platform rooted in personal growth and spiritual evolution. His work fuses ancient wisdom and modern insight, guiding others to rise into their highest potential. He's perhaps best known as the co founder of swagbucks.com, the leading online rewards platform under Prodige, where he helped distribute over 85 million in gift cards and rewards, earning national recognition on the Inc. 500 list and accolades in the loyalty marketing space. But Juan's story goes far beyond tech success. His journey has included roles as a stand up comedian, a PR director, baseball marketing executive, writer for National Lampoon, and more. He's lived many lives in one, and every twist has shaped the wisdom he shares today. After surviving a 40-foot fall and navigating life as a paraplegic, Ehran's spiritual path deepened. Rather than breaking him, it broke him open. Today, he's a teacher of embodiment, coherence, and remembrance, reminding us that even our greatest pain can become sacred fuel for transformation. We'll dive into parallel realities, forgiveness, fear's alchemy, raising your vibration, and how to truly live in a spiritually awake life in a modern world. So, wherever you are on your journey, seeking healing, purpose, or just deeper connection to your soul, this conversation is here to expand you. Let's get bare, let's get real, and let's welcome Eron Zehavi to the Bear Experiment podcast. I want to also thank you all for your support by subscribing to our YouTube channel and hitting the notification bell so that you never miss an episode of these amazing guests that are continuing to come onto our podcast, sharing their spiritual knowledge and helping us all elevate our higher conscience. Thank you so much. So let's talk, your story is really fascinating. Um, but I want to get your perspective then to share with all of us. Like, what does it mean to truly awaken? Since you are clearly at that level already, right? With everything that's personally happened to you. What is a good definition that you can share with us where we can easily understand what it's like to fully awaken?
Well, I will respond with an answer that you might not expect me to say, and that I don't think I am fully awakened. But it depends how far out we want to zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go to the full meta, biggest viewpoint of awakening, then the entire dream is over, and what's left is the dreamer. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm there yet. But I do think when people talk about awakening, and what I feel like the awakening that you're asking about is us awakening in the dream to recognize, wait a minute, this is not the way that I thought it was.
Right, right.
The biggest inversion, and we live in a world that's completely upside down and inverted in almost every single way. And so I think a lot about getting to the source of it. And the source of it comes down to recognizing that we're not human beings having spiritual experiences, we're
Mm-hmm.
spiritual beings having human experiences. For people that are spiritual or conscious or have gone through awakenings and they hear that and they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, great. I have that bumper sticker up. For people that have never heard that before, it's like
Right.
and so we have to not be too quick to step over the profundity of recognizing and remembering that we're literally souls manifested into physical form.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
difficult to
that's the
yeah.
awakening process, is
Right.
remembering, oh, wait a minute, I'm not I'm not the avatar. I'm actually the one moving the joystick.
And I'm always here in some form of energy or frequency. That soul, right? That's coming into this avatar is always around with us, right? Which is why they say that our loved ones are always with us, and right?
Yeah, beyond it's always around with us. It's us. it's what we are.
It's one.
It's, yeah, like when you really get to the heart of one, and that's all part of this inversion. When we think, I have a soul. No, you have a human. You are a soul.
Right. Right. So, what are some undeniable signs that someone is going through a spiritual awakening or beginning to go through a spiritual awakening?
A lot of stuff's not going to make sense. A lot of things that you thought were true aren't going to feel true.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things that you were interested in, you might not have interest in anymore. Some of the most general things are going to be like, I don't really feel like watching sports, or for a lot of people, not eating animals,
Mm-hmm.
or the way that they see the world. Politics don't make as much sense.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one for sure.
You know, there's a lot of things will break down. And it's part of the natural evolutionary cycle. We see it everywhere in nature, that part of the evolution process is the dissolution process. It's the caterpillar in the chrysalis
Mm-hmm.
that just liquefies into goop. And then how does it express itself?
Right.
It's into this butterfly. So the awakening process, which some might also call the dark night of the soul, a lot of times come together. The hero's journey, the phoenix rising from the ashes, all these stories we tell, the chrysalis. So you're going to experience breakdown and dissolution probably in most aspects of your life, because you've been attached and connected into a false identity and a false perception of what reality is. So there has to be some transmutation to happen for truth to emerge.
Right. So why is it then that with the process of a spiritual awakening, it usually comes with so much pain and sorrow and just, depression? Why is it why can't it be like a happy dance, right? Because
Yeah.
it's supposed to be a happy process in the end. Why does it come with so much pain
How else are you going to release it?
or even understand it, right? At
It's
that.
all, yeah, it's all there. It's all there. There's just one thing. And that's another one of those things that we can't step over. It's just one thing. And so if there's a pain that presents itself, if there's a sorrow, a sadness, a grief, a sickness, it's not that it's new, it's the closet that we didn't look at. So the awakening process is just finding the aspects of ourselves that haven't been tended to, the wounded parts, the hurt parts,
Mm-hmm.
the traumatized parts, bringing them to the light and being with them, resolving them, healing them, transmuting them, loving them, whatever they are. But it's going to come to the surface. And as it comes to the surface, we're going to experience it and we're going to feel it. But as we do that, it expands our capacity. And this is really important to recognize, because there is just one thing. And everything is happening within your own consciousness.
We're creating everything.
Everything. There's
Mhm.
nothing beyond or outside your consciousness within your experience. And I'd offer, if that's for some people that might be challenging to understand, here's an easy way to do it. I want you to imagine something beyond your imagination.
Okay.
Can you do it?
It's difficult.
It's impossible.
It's difficult. Yeah.
It's not, it's beyond difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You cannot imagine something beyond your imagination. All you would be doing is expanding your awareness of your imagination,
That makes sense. Okay.
right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you really get into that, not only understanding, but the embodiment and the feeling of that, bringing those together, everything that you experience is within you. It's within your consciousness. Nothing is outside, nothing is beyond.
Mm-hmm.
The worst atrocities on the planet, the
Right.
greatest of abundance,
Wars, right?
wars,
Babies dying.
all of it. It's all within our consciousness. And so if we deny it, or if we don't want to look at it, or we get so angry at it, and all these feelings, whatever it is, it's all valid. We don't want to go through life completely apathetic.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're afraid of it and we think that we're powerless to it, then that's how it's going to continue to propagate. But when we can recognize and expand our capacity and be able to be with it and to hold it and to love it the way that God would love his creations, that agape love. And that's part of the breakdown and the sickness and the loss and everything that happens is, can I be with this? Can I work through this? Can I trust through this? Can I be grateful through this? And it's challenging.
Very, very. So let's get into your personal life and what happened to you. Um, you survived a 40-foot fall.
Mm-hmm.
That's an experience that can certainly break the majority of us, right? Like, you can no longer walk.
Yeah, I've been living as a paraplegic for almost 8 years now.
Right. So how does that shape you? Can you walk us through that experience that happened in your life? We're talking about how everything that we perceive, we're bringing it into our own reality. Why would you bring such an experience into your own reality, right? Like I'm sure that you've sat and questioned that many, many, many times.
Yeah, yeah, I have my 10,000 plus hours in contemplation into that. And before I got injured, not long before, I had surrendered to God. And I said, you know what? I'm in. I want to be a light worker. I want to embody Christ consciousness. I want to do good works in the world. I'm in. Let's do this. I couldn't fight it. And I was going through my own awakening process. And it was very confusing to me because people around me weren't going through it. And I was married. My wife wasn't going through it. My friends weren't going through it.
How old
And
were you at this time? At this point?
so I was 38 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My children were 2 and 5 at the time. And not long after I surrendered to God, I fell 40 feet in the middle of the desert and woke up in an ICU to a doctor telling me I'm never going to walk again.
Jesus.
And 3 months later, I closed my company. I'm an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So I re entered the world 3 months in the hospital and rehab, just on my back for the first month. Like the first one I was in pretty bad shape, had infections, so they couldn't operate for a month. So I was just flat on my back staring at a hospital ceiling for a month and a lot of other things happening with my body. And everything is, I'm watching my body dissolve. I'm watching my legs dissolve. And then training, now I'm re entering the world
Mm-hmm.
at 38, like in my peak on a wheelchair to a world that I used to know that is now entering in an entire different way. And then after I closed my company, then I got divorced. And then my parents died. So full dissolution. I just
Wow.
watched my body, my marriage, my family,
Yeah.
my dreams, my
Uh,
identity, my finances, everything was just. And I had somebody say to me, a friend of mine said this to me when I was in the hospital. He said, "Don't take this the wrong way, but this couldn't have happened to a better guy." And what he meant by that was I was already optimistic before my injury. I already had a lot of trust. I already believed in magic and miracles. And so now, basically, the assignment came in from my boss that says, cool, I appreciate the fact that you want to help. And I know what you believe and what's in your heart. And now you're going to get to work
Now you're
because
coming in. Yeah, now you're
yeah,
coming in full throttle because you're really going to experience
you're
what
going to
so
have the
many of us are going
experience.
through, right? So let me backtrack a little bit, if it's okay with you. What can you share with us at that point? You're in the hospital, you have your accident, and the doctor's telling you that you're never going to be able to walk again. What are some of the thoughts that go through your mind at that point?
Yeah, well, it's um it's a full spectrum. At some moments there's optimism and oh, you know what, it's okay. We'll find a solution. Maybe that's why I got injured because we'll be able to create uh, a cure for spinal cord injuries.
Maybe right. You're like that catalyst, right? That now, because of
Yeah,
your injury, you'll help others that have had the similar
yeah,
experience, an accident,
maybe.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, on the other side of that is just absolute hell.
Yeah.
It's terror.
So how long does it take you to get back kind of in a mindset where you can engage again with society and kind of just like move forward again as a human being, you know? Because I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of depression and setbacks, right? So many of them, you know, you're losing your wife, your you know, your finances. You know, at that point somebody doesn't want, but somebody doesn't want to continue to move forward with that, but you've always been optimistic. So how long does it take you to kind of start getting back on your feet at that point?
It's similar to asking how long does it take to awaken?
Mm-hmm.
It's
It's
just a continual practice.
mm-hmm.
I don't think a time can be put to it. Now, there are some people that will just, you know what? Cool. This is how my life is going to be. I'm going to make the most
Right.
of it. And there are some that live the whole rest of their lives miserable.
Correct.
So it's not about time quantitatively, it's about time qualitatively. And that's one of the biggest inversions in our society and in our culture is that we become enslaved to artificial time, which measures our time quantitatively. We measure the value of our time and we measure the value of our success quantitatively. It's not about how much. The question really is how much trust do you need to generate? Or what quality of being do you need to generate to be able to process what's happening and get through and move on? Well, that is generating trust, gratitude, forgiveness, love, peace, acceptance, contentment, surrender, joy. And those can be challenging to generate those or to experience those when you're surrounded in so much darkness. So there's still cycles we need to honor. You know, when the storm is raging, sometimes you just have to hold on for dear life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
You're
not the time
you're
to plan what you're going to have for lunch.
right. Right. Like
No, so you,
it could only get better at this point, right? Like that's the way that you need to start looking at it also.
um, you know, things can always get better, but they can always get worse. They can always get worse. And you know who's a great teacher to show us that?
Hmm.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say that, but
This is a great teacher to show us where we like, and I'm not a nihilist. Anything could happen at any moment. We don't know. But better or worse is also still relative.
yes.
It's all relative. Nothing has any inherent meaning. And that's such a gift.
We give everything the meaning of everything that's happening, right? And that's something that's so simple when we articulate it, but then it's so difficult to kind of process it and apply it on a daily basis.
Yeah, you know that's the thing with practice. Because if you think about being a master at something, whatever you think about mastery, practice is not the path to mastery. Practice is the path of mastery. And so it's not like we would practice this enough. Like, oh, for 90 days, I was in this practice
Mm-hmm.
of having gratitude about my challenges. So now I'm a master at that. So now I don't have to practice being grateful for my challenges anymore. That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
The only thing that exists is now. It's just now. It's an eternal now after now after now. And so the only thing for us to do is when we become consciously aware that we're actually choosing our experience of the reality that we're having, because sometimes we get caught up in it, then we get to step into the driver's seat and say, well, what experience do I want to have right now?
With this,
How do I
with
want
what's
to
currently
perceive?
happening right now.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we want to throw ourselves a pity party.
Yeah. Can
And
I tell
sometimes
you
we
that
want
that's
to
something that I've tried to apply recently, right? Because again, it's easier said than done, right? When we're doing it for ourselves, because we get so caught up in our thoughts and in our head. And whenever something crappy happens, like I'll sit there for a moment by myself, reflecting, and just ask myself, what is the experience that I am meant to have? Right, or the feeling that I am meant to feel with this experience right now, and seeing it from that perspective almost like separates me from that moment, and I could visualize it and really see a happier ending at that point, because everything is whatever I make it out to be.
yeah.
So with that being said, with everything that you were dealing with at the time, were there any spiritual practices that you would kind of guide yourself with to help you alleviate or answer any questions that you were seeking?
Yeah, well, you actually alluded to one in what you just shared. And I've learned so many incredible things from my time as a paraplegic, from my time as an entrepreneur, from my time as a father, from my time
Mhm.
as an ex-husband, my time in so many ways. Everything is all part of our one singular experience. And so everything's a lesson, everything's a practice. And if you recognize that we are spirits in form, everything is a spiritual practice. Life is ceremony.
Yes.
But one of the biggest things I learned, particularly when I was in the hospital, was how to be able to zoom out and take what I call a cellular level view.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we can perceive the experience, so right now, here I am, a human being in tremendous physical pain, a lot of mental anguish, a lot of fear, everything's breaking down, and I can't stop it. I got and it's not just grieving one thing of I can't walk. Paralysis, paraplegia is literally grieving 1,000 things. There's the, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to ride bikes with my son.
Mm.
And then I have to grieve that full experience. And then you get through that. Oh, maybe we could find other things, or I could be on my chair, or there's, oh my God, I won't be able to pick my daughter up out of her crib. Thousands of those, right? So it can be very challenging, very difficult,
Sure.
but it's important. But when you zoom out from the cellular level view, you become the witness and the observer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that shifts things. So instead of have the point of view that it's happening to me, I can witness it and view it and think, wow, this is fascinating. What an extreme experience.
What an extreme experience.
And then the question becomes from the soul view, it's like, how do I bring as much love to this as I can?
And how can I serve, right? Helping humanity from this perspective now, where I'm seeing something completely different to who I was before.
Yeah. And it's all frame. And that's the beauty of recognizing that life inherently has no meaning. The objective of circumstances that we have don't have any inherent meaning, and we give meaning to it is another way of saying everything is just a story, and we get to create the story. So we've already thrown out some, me being on a chair. It's like, oh, my life is over. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me. I'll be a catalyst for spinal cord injuries. It'll help me to serve. I don't know. I
Right.
don't know which ones those are going to be, but I get to choose which story I want to put my energy toward.
Mm-hmm.
And some will be higher vibration, some will be lower vibration. And we don't want to choose the stories that just have like the greatest outcome. It's not like, oh, well, maybe I'll get robot legs and be able to fly. Like, maybe, but like that doesn't excite me. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not my truth. But there's a process that I developed, particularly when I was in the hospital, but over the years, that something I work a lot with my clients on, what I call the art process. And it stands for acknowledge, reframe, and transmute.
Okay.
So the first step with the acknowledgement is for us to separate the objective from the subjective. So what is it that happened? Like, what's just the actual thing that happened? And then what's our subjective experience about it? And what most of us don't recognize, because when we don't take that view, we're just in the experience, our subjective perspective is entangled with the objective experience.
Sure.
And so the first step is just to separate the wheat from the chaff. And now we're not saying that your subjective viewpoint is wrong. It's not about right or wrong. It's not about getting rid of it. It's not about validating it. It's just really like creating two very clear lists. Like, as much as I subscribe to the one, we experience multiplicity and duality. Why? It's a great tool. So now we can separate it and just look at the objective pieces. So take my experience, for example. I could say that, I became a paraplegic, and I ruined my family's life, and everything was falling apart, and yada, yada, yada. Now, let's just put the objective thing. I fell. My spinal cord got damaged. The communication from my brain to my legs had the pathway damaged. I'm currently not able to move or feel things below my waist because the communication pathways with my brain aren't operating properly. Right? Those are just objective things. Now I get to choose what that means to me.
Mm-hmm.
I get to choose what to make that mean. So, right, that's the first step, is that acknowledgement. Now, the reframe. The reason it's a reframe and not a frame is because our initial frame, 99% of the time, is going to be one based on fear and negativity.
Always, always. We're programmed that way.
Yeah. We're programmed that way biologically from our lizard brain to avoid, dangers. And then we're also fed that from all of these external inputs that are driving that fear. When, we're not being chased by saber tooths, there's no bombs falling on our houses. Like, thank God, some people have that.
Right.
There's no military walking down our street. But people are terrified. People are just scared. People just are afraid. We
Yeah.
just go around being afraid. And so that's our natural state. So now that we've separated the objective from the subjective, we can go through and think, well, what's your feeling about this? What's your experience of it? And then people will share. I've done this practice with people that have had the most, I don't even want to go into the detail, the most horrible, atrocious things happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that just looks like my life looks like a cakewalk.
Right.
And it's just share, and whatever it is perfect. Okay, and so now we go back into having this two lists. So here's a list of things that this could mean. Now, the foundation of this is where we come back, recognizing nothing in life has any inherent meaning, right?
Right.
Cool. Does that change when it's something that's really difficult, or does it remain true?
Right.
So it's like, it's great in theory.
Right.
It's like, yeah, nothing in life has any meaning. Okay, well, what's going to happen when somebody you love, gets cancer?
Right.
or when your house burns down.
Hmm.
Is it still true? Yeah, of course it is. But now it moves from theory to practice. And like you said, easier said than done. Of course, everything's easier said than it's easier to say anything than to do anything. But that's what we're here to do is get into that practice. So that's the challenge of like, oh, now I have to actually apply this idea to my life. I don't know how to do that. Well, you don't know how to do that because your house has never burned down before. So you never
Right. You've never experienced it.
never experienced it. And then part of it is having the frame and the context. So now from that frame, the practice is you don't even have to believe them. But what are some more positive things it could mean? What could it mean? So we've already done this a little bit. For me, it's like it could maybe I am going to be the catalyst to find cures for spinal cord.
Right.
Maybe my children growing up with a father on a wheelchair
Hmm.
will have an expanded level of compassion and care for
And awareness.
themselves and awareness that's going to impact the world in ways far greater than I
A
ever could.
100%. 100%. I love the way you position that. Yes.
But I mean, maybe, I don't, but all of these things,
Or
maybe,
theoretical,
yeah,
theoretic, right?
maybe I'm being punished. Maybe this is karma for having a horrible life. Like both
But
of the
again, that would also be the reality and perspective that you're placing on it at that point, right? Like, oh, this is punishment because I was a horrible, teenager or whatever.
exactly. But all of those things are equally valid choices because there's no inherent meaning to it, right?
Makes
So
sense.
now, so we can separate the objective from the subjective. And then we take the subjective, which is already going to be predominantly, if not entirely negative, and then we say, well, what else could it be? Now, the amazing part of this practice is that when you go through it and you start to, a lot of people are challenged to want to create the positives because it doesn't feel true. And so, well, but it could be anything. Like we've just been doing it here, right? Now, 100% of the time that I've done this, not only with myself, but with my clients or anyone else, when we start going through with the positive possibilities, some of them will trigger them. They'll be like, oh, yeah. Or they might get goosebumps. Or like even one I just said, you were like 100%, yeah. Like that one, you felt that one.
Mm-hmm.
That one was true. Well, I probably said three or four, but one of them you were like 100% great. Now that's your sign. That's your truth because it's lighting you up.
Right.
And so when we can, from the perspective of the cellular level view of seeing this and play and recognizing, okay, I have all of these choices, and some of them create terror and grief and sadness and anger and fear, and I could choose those. And I have these other choices, these other frames, and some of them create possibility, hope, opportunity, excitement, inspiration, motivation. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I have 100% sovereign control over which one of these I choose right now.
Right. No, that's all right. That's all that you have control over at that point. You have no control over the exterior of what's happening, only the way that you react to what's happening in your life at the moment.
Exactly. And so when we can lay it out here and recognizing as well, understanding the different hemispheres of the brain and the masculine, feminine within the self, because there is the aspect of ourselves, the masculine part, that views things logically,
Right.
pragmatically, rationally. And we need to speak to that aspect of ourselves of like, why is it logical to feel inspiration when things are so bad? We can't just, oh, just feel better. It's not all about feeling, it's also about thinking. Because if it doesn't make sense to us and feel good, then we're not going to be holistically aligned with it.
Right.
It's not going to stick. And so now, as we do that and we start to see, it provides a context and a container that allows us to go through processes of challenge to create a more empowered context and stories from which we can go through and do the work, which is going to be challenging and navigating. And how
Sure.
often do we do that? Over and over and over again. And that's the process. And that's where the transmutation comes in. People talk about being light workers.
Mm-hmm.
We say that a lot. So think about this. If you were a light worker and you came to the office, and came to do your work, and you sat down at your desk, and your boss came in and gave you your big stack of work for the day, what would your boss bring you?
Accounts to call on, numbers to crunch. Like what?
I'll tell you what, you want to know what they'd bring you as a light worker? They'd bring you darkness.
Yeah.
Here's your darkness. What's the work is transmutation. Thank you. Here's all the difficult things for you to transmute into light. That's what a light worker is. A light worker doesn't receive light. A light worker receives darkness and does the work of transmuting into light. So when we receive darkness and experience challenges and difficulties, it's not God's way of punishing us. It's God's way of saying, I trust you. Thank you. Here's the work to do.
I want to talk to you a little bit about parallel realities and how there's quantum physics information on that where we're living parallel realities at the same time and we shift to whichever version of ourselves we're looking to be. So at this point, I am a single mother who is also divorced, and this is the version, the reality that I'm choosing to live in at the moment. But if all of a sudden now I'm manifesting that I want to be this, entrepreneur making millions of dollars a year, that version of myself is already existing in another parallel reality. Is there any truth to that? And is that what manifestation truly is?
So, a couple questions there. I would respond to the first question of if it's true with if everything truly is one, and the infinite is not many, the infinite is one. And do you subscribe to the idea that there is an infinite reality, an infinite existence,
Yes.
an infinite one?
Yes.
Well, then I would attest it would be absolutely, utterly, completely impossible for parallel realities to not be true. How would it be possible for that to not be true if we live in an infinite existence?
Right. Right.
So, at least in terms of like the possibility, now we've expressed ourselves into physical form with a focused awareness into these bodies and these perceptions and these experiences that come with a set of maybe conditions or rules or agreements, might even be the better word to say. So I can't just sprout wings right now and start flying around my room. But is it possible somewhere in existence for consciousness to express itself as a human being, as I am, that can shapeshift into a bird? It has to be possible.
So is that what the
That's not my reality. That's
right?
not my truth for how I'm expressed.
So for anybody that is manifesting a husband, a child, a home, is that the beginning stages of manifestation is the question.
The beginning stages of manifestation is feeling the experience of what it is that you desire.
As if you already have it.
Yeah. And we hear that, but it's one of those things too that gets thrown around where we step over the importance. It's like the golden rule. Treat others the way you'd like to be treated. Everyone's like, I know the golden rule. I know the
Yeah.
golden rule.
Do we do it?
But yeah, it's just called the golden rule for a reason. It's
Hmm.
like, no, you don't know the golden, you have to do the golden rule. Energy creates matter, right? Manifestation is the creation of our desires into physical form, into matter, right? Energy creates matter. So if you want to manifest something in the physical, then you need to be able to generate the energy that will grow and create and produce what you want in the physical. If you want apples, you're not going to plant orange seeds. You'll
Right.
plant apple
We,
seeds.
we got to put in the work somehow.
But if you want a husband, what now? Do you want a husband because you want somebody to cook you food, because you want somebody to take out the trash, or do you want love and
Right.
intimacy and companionship and completeness and wholeness and joy? If those are the things you want, then you need to create and generate those things. Because what's not going to attract a desirable husband is lack, neediness,
Because
less
that's at that
than,
point, that's what you're going to attract to yourself.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So manifestation has to begin. Well, the truth is we're always manifesting everything,
All the time.
but focused manifestation is about being
Intentional manifestation.
intentionally, yes, very, very clear and attuned to the energy that you're emitting and what you're putting out in the field, which is exactly what we're talking about with the art process. It's the same thing. That is a process to get us into a state of vibrational frequency that matches our thoughts and desired outcomes so that the energy that moves out into the field will have an opportunity to grow and reflect to us what it is that we desire.
Yes. Yes. What is your feeling on plant-based medication in order to open our senses to be able to connect to the spiritual realm, or just, kind of block that monkey brain that we have so that we're able to elevate almost to another frequency? There's so many of them, DMT, ayahuasca. What's your feeling on that? Is that helpful? Is that hurtful?
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Both.
Well, the question is it helpful? Is it hurtful?
Yes.
Everything can be a medicine or a poison.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things get grouped together. So whether you mentioned the DMT or ayahuasca, there's so many different medicines. There's so many different psychoactives. There's so many different tools that we can use. And absolutely, they can be incredibly beneficial to the path of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just hearsay. I could tell you from my own personal experience. I could tell you from personal experiences from other people. But a lot of people don't want to hear just, well, that was happened to you, but why would it happen to me? There are so many studies being done now on how ibogaine and psilocybin can help with PTSD and depression.
Yeah, yeah. So many
And
veterans and right, military personnel who have been on the verge of committing suicide have started taking psilocybin, and it's whatever it's doing, where it's reconnecting your neurons, and it's just doing something to your brain where it is medically proving to help them with their depression and their PTSD.
yeah. Now I've worked with um, many different medicines, many different plant medicines, some psychoactive, some not. In worked with shamans, worked
Mm-hmm.
with some real masters, and it, each one has its own flavor, its
Yeah.
own and its own work. But generally speaking, what a lot of them can do is help to break out of the spell of us identifying with this artificial world that we've created.
Correct.
We can actually feel and embody a deeper truth and resonance that we haven't been able to touch because we've been lost in the machine.
Yes, yes. Yeah, very true, very true. I was watching a podcast where they were talking about near-death experiences, which, you know, you clearly came very close to one, and how we make that decision at that point also, where there we're not ready to go 100% yet, and we choose to come back because we're not finished with whatever mission we've set for ourselves here on planet Earth, right? And how when you are on the other side at that point and you reflect back to your human experience, how it all seems so small and fast, right? Like, you know, this lifespan that we're in, I'm 48. I feel like I've been on this planet forever. And it's just like in a blink of an eye, you realize how fast everything just went.
Yeah.
And just coming back then, that's how it shifts also their perspective. They've had a different vision of what reality really is. And, you know, that's a blessing and a curse, right? To everything that we've talked about earlier. It's how do we perceive that experience then where we come back and we are now optimistic about this experience and how can we from this perspective now help others that may need to hear this message so that we can elevate them with their negative experience that they're achieving at the time, which is what you're doing now with your coaching. So, share a little bit about how you're helping others with your coaching and what you're offering to those that are needing your help. You know, so many of us need it. You know, but I'm sure that people that have had a lot, like you said, harder accidents or experiences happen to them, right? Like how do you help somebody that's really going through that dark night of the soul that we talk about where you just, you know, this person is ready to check out. How do you come in? How does Eron help?
Hmm. I thought about this quite a bit as an entrepreneur before I started coaching, but wanting to create different products and businesses and working with people that are supporting the world as best they can. And we look around the world and see so much suffering in so many ways. And some people are all about fixing the climate, and some people want to stop war, and some people are concerned with immigration, and a million other things, and some was with gun control. And then we have the personal experiences, and then somebody got divorced, or somebody's child died, or somebody became a paraplegic. There's all of these things around, right? Where do we put our energy and our focus to it? And what I realized is the one thing that I can do that can help the most amount of people collectively and individually. And ultimately, like the one thing there is to do is to help the person reconnect to their divinity. Help the person remember that they are creating their experience. Help the person know that they're not being punished. You're either a victim or a creator. This is the
No.
spectrum. It doesn't take away the work. It doesn't take away the challenge. It doesn't take away the sadness. It doesn't take away the pain, but it does take away the suffering. And what it does is it reframes the work. And so the challenge, the sadness, uh, it's okay to feel sad. If something horrible happened to something or someone you loved, sadness is probably the right response. You know,
Correct.
not that there's a right or a wrong, but it's a part of you because this goes back to remembering there's nothing outside of us. Everything is happening within our experience, everything is within our own consciousness. So the work is very, very multifaceted. And it's a lot of what we talked about here, but it's also can be very personalized, but it's understanding the balance too between the logical, rational, pragmatic mind and then the abstract, emotional, feeling based mind. Because Sometimes we have the logic of it, but we're just tuned out. Sometimes we feel so much, but and it doesn't make any sense. So it's understanding that balance here within that of
Hmm.
where we direct the work. But when you can come back to that source point and remember, as we started, oh, I am a soul having a human experience. I am a spirit in form, and truly be able to embody that from the source point. Now I can say, how am I going to navigate through these challenges? And then you can apply tools, and you can do different things, and you can do the affirmations and the visualizations and the journaling and the art process and the practices and so many different things, depending on, or the plant medicines, or read the books or listen to the podcasts. But it's an entirely different way of receiving them based on where you're coming from. And so we have to get to that source point where there's a fully holistic, embodied knowing, both felt and thought, that I am the one that is having the entirety of the experience. It's all within me. There is no challenge greater than my ability to expand my capacity so that I can love it, forgive it, transmute it, and then create what I desire. So that's the work.
How important is the power of, because we forgive others, right? Oh, this person did something really crappy to me. I forgive you. But it's so difficult to forgive yourself sometimes. Why is it so difficult? What's the challenge in self-forgiveness?
I love that you asked this because forgiveness is not recognized nearly enough for how essential it is for us to be able to create the lives we desire.
I agree.
It's foundational.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Jesus said, you forgive 77 times 7 times. You can't do it enough. And you can say it, and that's great. And sometimes we speak things into existence as a way to try to get ourselves to feel it first or to feel it afterwards. We speak
Mm-hmm.
it first. That's great. But people that say, this happens a lot. I don't know how you are with your ex, and you don't even have to share, but a lot of people who are divorced say, "Oh, my ex, yeah, I've forgiven him. I forgive him. I just don't want to ever see him again or bump into him, and you can't say his name around me."
Right.
Doesn't sound like you've forgiven him
Right,
then.
right. There's still a lot of resentment in
There's
that
still a lot of
comment, you know?
resentment.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you can't say hello to the person, I don't think you've actually forgiven them. It's deeper than the words. And so the self, this comes down a lot as well to where we started from, of who is the self? Who is the I? So we've been identified with this false perception of who we are. So even to be able to forgive ourselves, we don't even know who we are to begin with. So that creates a lot of muck. But then when you get to the core of it and the heart of it, that's where shame comes in.
Right, right. And
So,
that's the enemy right there. It's shame.
yes, shame is like, are you familiar with the Hawkins scale of consciousness?
Yes, I am. I
So
am.
the
I'm not an expert in it, but yes,
It's
I know who you're
okay.
talking
So
about
it's
now.
basically, and whether it's Hawkins or not,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and with all tremendous respect and reverence to Hawkins, I think it's a phenomenal scale and way that it's measured. It's also, it's like one of those things that once it's presented and you've learned it and you feel it and you've seen it,
It's based on your vibrational
it's,
levels, right?
yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes obvious. You're like, of course. But it still took a lot of this brilliance to bring it forth. If you recognize, think about it like a thermometer of consciousness.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think about it.
And so, and then he gave numbers to them, but the very bottom is shame, shame and guilt.
Yes.
And then it's like anger, depression, apathy. And then there's like this neutrality. And then you start moving up a little bit
And then
more
that's
to
where you
like
start elevating once you surpass all those. Yeah.
possibility and courage. And then all the way up to like love and peace and joy and the higher ones. And so but it's actual vibration. If you think about it like energy too, and just waves of energy. So this is when people talk about lightening up or awakening, it's literally just going into a higher vibration, a higher
Yeah, you almost have to be, and I hate to say this, but I've heard it from so many different conversations where people are talking out, speaking about like spiritual awakening and so forth, where it's almost like you have to be a little delusional with the way that you approach life. And I think that there's some truth to that because, like you were mentioning earlier, it is an ugly world that we live in. If we look at it from a logical perspective, right? From that masculine mind, it's a crappy world out there. Wars and sick kids and divorces and death and if we just focus on that, that's we're going to be miserable human beings. But if we focus on spiritual alignment and, that we're all one and love and connection, all of a sudden now it's shifting us to a different vibrational level and life just becomes a little more easier, I guess, right? Just from looking at viewing it like with you, with your optimism from the beginning, from before your accident to afterwards. A lot of people would not be where you're at today, you know?
I wasn't whistling Dixie the whole time.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. I can't
And
even
that's
imagine
what's
what you went through.
important, for people to see. I have a lot of people that will say to me things just like, I could never do what you did. I could never be as strong as you.
Yeah, it certainly seems
And
like
it's like,
something I would say to you as well. I think that you're an amazing human being with everything that you, from everything that you've been through to where you are today and how you're helping others going through similar dark paths. You are an angel walking on this earth. You really are. You're amazing. We need more people like you.
well, I appreciate that. But there's also what I reflect to people is that if this happened to you, you could do exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether you would or you wouldn't, we don't know.
Right.
You could. And that's another thing. I go back. I think this is where Jesus was such a great teacher. And this has nothing to do with religion, but such a great embodied teacher of showing us, what it could, we talked about, it could always get worse, but what is our capacity to love? So I really I love the teaching of, we all know his last words, essentially, right? What were his last words? Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do.
Okay.
So he's got nails in his hands, and he's bleeding out. And what is on his heart is forgiveness.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'm going back to the Bible right now. Yes.
And
Yes.
it's not even about the Bible. And I know I've mentioned him a few times because I think this is a big thing too. This is maybe a conversation for a different podcast of how religion has usurped the actual teachings of Yeshua.
Well,
And
that's
there's
one of the questions that I actually had to talk to you about, but we're kind of we're speaking about so many things that, like you said, like this is almost a conversation to have on its own. But it's how,
it's all tied together. But you know what? If to bring it back though, so we came in that as the example in terms of what's possible for us. How do we get through it with the optimism? Now, what I'm going to say might seem, of course, easier said than done, but how do you do it? By choosing it. Everything is choice. Everything is choice. And when we're disconnected from our awareness that we have a choice, that's when we just get lost in the swirl and
yeah.
become victims of the experience. But when you're in an embodied and remembered state that I get to choose how I perceive this experience,
Mm-hmm.
that opens up the funnel of then saying, well, what do I want? Do I want to feel horrible or do I want to feel great? Do I want to feel fear? Do I want to feel love? And then you can choose and intend, and then that's when we do the work of creating that. Everybody can do that. That's how we were made in God's image.
Clearly, you're spiritual and a religious man. What is
I
your
don't consider myself religious
more
at all.
spiritual than anything else? How harmful or helpful has religion been, organized religion been to this world?
I think it's been very beneficial, and I don't think anything has been more harmful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just bought two Bibles, and one is almost like a comic book, just to better understand the history of Jesus and um, all of his teachings. And I find it very difficult to follow.
Well, it's not, the
That's
Bible's
just
not
me.
Jesus's teachings.
Yeah, right, right. It's man
That,
written.
that- that look, this is what, so this man, Yeshua, Yeshua ben Joseph, Yeshua, son of Joseph. I think we can, some people say he didn't exist, and he's okay, let's just say that he's a real person. I think he was a real person. And he was a teacher, and he was a leader, and he showed us by example. And a lot of his teachings, which are, some of them are in the synoptic gospel, the earlier parts, some are attributed to different books and teachings that were omitted from the Bible that
Mhm.
are now said to be forgeries or not real and fake. So, but you cut through it, the majority of the Bible comes from Paul, who's a guy who never met Jesus. He's a guy who had a revel after Jesus died. He encountered Jesus in his own revelatory experience.
Right, right.
And there's a very, very clear difference between what's attributed directly to Jesus and then what's attributed from Paul or the teachings that started to unfold from them. Jesus never, ever said, the way to heaven is to worship me. Never. He said it's through our works. It's the things that we do. It's how we live. And he was showing us there is, I and my Father are one. Same for you. It's not exclusive. He's not exclusive to that. Then the narrative started to come. No, it's not about the message, it's about the messenger. So they took the messenger and made him the Godhead. And now, what a sneaky way to subvert ourselves. Now, there's a lot of great stuff in the message, but the organized religion, and even to say that, a lot, we're talking about like Judeo-Christian,
Right.
or basically we talk about Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Generally speaking, when we say organized religion, and
Correct.
there's many more, right? But so that's, we also want to like call it out. These are all beautiful religions.
And valid, right? To whoever's following those teachings, that's an individual, an independent um experience that you want to have also, right? With
Yeah.
your journey.
And they all have distortions within them because they're not complete, they are not whole, they are just aspects of the one. They're different perspectives of the one.
Right.
And some of them, particularly, I think with Christian, well, you don't have to we can call any of them out, but I do think that Christianity, or modern day Christianity, is very, very different than what Yeshua was actually teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it like a chocolate chip cookie baked with poison. Like, yeah, it's got a lot of goodness in it, great, but it will also kill you.
Yeah.
And the core piece of it is that what modern Christianity teaches, and so many people, I get so much hate from people for sharing this, the idea that you and God are actually connected is like heretical. Why? Because we're born sinners. How dare you say that you are as good as Jesus? Who do you think you are? What sort of pride do you have
Well,
to
that's
not
that's
humble
always been
yourself?
right. That's always been my exclusion from religion because I've never met a more judgmental group of people than the most religious so-called, God lovers out there or Jesus lovers out there.
And there's a lot of people. I was just talking, a friend of mine, Ryan Kalish, who, oh, you should interview him on your
No, I
podcast.
would love to.
Amazing guy, former two-time World Series champion
Oh
for the
wow.
Red Sox and Cubs. And I just got off the phone with him just before I got on with you, and he's in Uganda. And he's walking around the streets of Uganda, literally feeding homeless children.
That's right. That's a purpose. That's a calling.
And he's like, I don't think for me, if you're not doing this, like that's the foundation for being Christ consciousness. If you're not feeding like the poor and the
Right.
hungry, then
Right.
Christ consciousness isn't there. And that's what he was sharing for his truth. And it's kind of hard to argue with that.
No, absolutely. And
And
Tim Tebow
yeah,
is also a person that you can, share a lot of those same practices with, right? With
100%.
trafficking right now and his foundation. And he's always preaching, within his Christianity beliefs. But nonetheless, he's doing the right thing, right? He's helping others, which in
So
the
there's a
end, that's
lot of good there,
right.
right? But what we need to untangle is this really bullshit story that we're disconnected from God and that we need to fear God.
Yes.
So that's a huge piece of this, is that if we think about the whole existence, the whole world, the substrate, and I always want to come back to the source, because if you plant something that has a distortion, even if it's 1%, that's going to grow. If your body has 1% cancer, it's going to grow. So we have to get to the source and understand the purity and the pristineness of our source. And if at our very source, there's nothing that we can get more sourceful to than God. Can we agree to that? There's
Uh,
nothing
a
there.
100%, 100%.
And what are we taught to do? Fear God
Yeah. If we don't do this, God's going to punish us. If
for
we don't
all
say
of the
this, God's going
reasons.
to punish
Yeah.
us.
So if the substrate of existence itself, our creator, our judge, but truly the energetic source that is all of life, and we're taught to be afraid of it, how do you think that is going to play out in the world? It's going to play out with all of the violence.
Chaos, the chaos that's
Absolutely.
happening worldwide.
Absolutely. So the source substrate is that we're taught to fear God. And then what a lot of people argue says, no, 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 the original word, it means to revere or to have awe. Great. Well, then talk about revering God.
Yeah.
Talk about having awe for God. But the words matter. And I love words. I love communication. My background is in communication. Now, in some ways, words actually create distance from the actual thing. But then our use of words can help us come back to it in a way. So we over rely on words, but they still are extensions of what we're saying. So when we're talking about learning to fear God, fear God, fear God, and we have the word fear in our world and we think about it of all these other things we're afraid of, then we're going to associate that with if you fear something, you can't trust it.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot
Right.
implicitly trust
That's a
something that you
great that's a
fear.
great point right there. You're absolutely right. Like whatever it is that you fear, there's no way that you can trust. So how are we supposed to trust in God at that point? What are you teaching us?
Yeah, exactly. Now, if we want to play the game of the devil, I don't believe in like the devil, but let's just use that archetype because that's what gets told to me a lot, is that it's Satan's work or the devil's work that will kind of pull you away into that boastful thing. Let's zoom out a little bit. There's just one thing. There's just one field, right? There's just one ocean. So think about it as an ocean. There's just one ocean. And we are the waves expressed from the ocean. There's no disconnection. So if God truly is infinite and God then expresses itself through us, it's an absolute impossibility for us to be disconnected from it. How can a wave be disconnected from the ocean?
Impossible.
It's impossible. If you had a pizza, give me another example. You have a whole pizza, and that pizza is God, and you are just a slice, right? You're just a little slice. That slice is still pizza.
It's still part of that pizza.
It's the 100% of that slice is pizza.
Yes.
Not the whole pizza, but there's zero part of it that's not pizza, right? That's us and God. So the perception that we're separate from God, that we're sinners, that we have to do certain things or go through other people or follow certain things to connect to God. Who would tell us that story?
Humans.
Right, but it would probably the devil.
The devil, Satan. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I get you.
Mm-hmm.
Satan said, "How do I get people
A
to?"
lot of a lot of people nowadays could be could be
Right?
close to the devil with the
But
way
there's
that everything is playing out.
so many people that are espousing about be careful for the devil's work are doing the devil's work.
Right. Right.
Separation, the only thing to heal is the separation, is the perception of separation really is more true. Because when you recognize everything is one, energy creates matter, matter exists in the finite, and the finite in 3D in physicality, it grows, it decays, but energy is eternal and infinite. Our souls, our spirits, that energy that was around before we were born, and it'll be here after we die,
Mm-hmm.
is also here right now. That such that whenever
In essence, that's what Christ consciousness is too.
it's the quality of that energy,
Mm-hmm.
what are we going to do with that? That idea that heaven and hell is a choice of consciousness. They're not places. Because we get down to again, the source, there are no other places. It's just here. There's no other time. It's just now. So you can understand that what would hell be is separation from God, which is impossible, but it's not impossible in our perceptions.
Right.
And that's what makes humans different from all other creatures of nature, is that we can imagine and we can perceive what isn't. We're the only creatures in all of existence that fathoms the insane idea that it's separate from the whole.
Right.
And then religion actually teaches us that. So whose work are we actually doing?
Right. Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense, you know, and that's part of the, I think, disillusion that so many of us right now in a more awakened world that's taking place, whether it's because of Earth's spiritual elevation, whatever it's happening, I think that more and more people are beginning to question everything, right? Which is part of an awakening, which is what's happening in the world right now. This is not as taboo as it would have been, 15 years ago for us to have a podcast talking about this information. A lot of people would have been like, these two are nuts. We got to
A
get
lot
them
of
on
people
some
say that
medication.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
There's
I
but
think
there's
that but I
less.
think that even the ones that say that are still skeptical and they're like, let me listen to see what they're talking about because something is happening. And I need to become more aware to better understand what is happening spiritually. Right? We're all going to die. That's the one thing that we know for a fact that's going to happen. We all have an expiration date, right? We're all born, we're all going to die. What are we going to do with what's in between?
Mhm.
Right? Well, all that time that's in between. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, Efron, We've been talking for a minute here, but I want to just, what does it mean to activate? Let me ask you one last question. So what does it mean to activate your power, and how can listeners start doing that today from the lessons that you've learned, right? You've had, some pretty big hiccups in your life, So how can those of us listening today that are looking for that encouragement, what are some suggestions that you can send to them?
If we want to activate our power, we need to plug into our source. What is the power source?
Well, it all goes back to the same thing. Yeah.
It's just one thing.
Yeah. That is so true. So how can those listening that want to communicate with you and engage more with you and listening to some, and need help from you, how can they reach you?
Sure. They can go to my website. It's just
Mm-hmm.
eronzehavi.com, which is going through a bit of a transformation now, so that what they'll see today might not be what they'll see next week or in a couple.
Okay. Well, that's exciting.
But you can find me on socials, and
Mm-hmm. Are you on all the platforms?
yeah, I do. Right now, it's mainly Instagram and TikTok, and then building out more of the YouTube is to come. And
Yes.
I've been in a period for a long time. I This is the frame that I see it is these three stages. We think about I wasn't awake and now I'm awake, but there's a third stage. So the first stage is that we are a human being doing, and we know ourselves as a human. And the way that we navigate through the world is through our actions. And then we go through an awakening process. And then we become a spiritual being. And we just let it all go. And everything dissolves. And it's like, I'm going to meditate and I want to sit. And it's not about what I do, it's about how I feel. Now, that's an evolution, but a lot of people get stuck there and they don't know how to navigate in the 3D world.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of broke spiritual people. We still chose this. We still chose this consumption matrix. We chose to have these bodies and these homes and cars and air conditioning, and we're still extensions of God creating it. And so the third stage is a spiritual being doing. So when you come from source, and there now you can take the actions into the world that might look the same as it did or might look drastically different. And I say all that, that's part of the teaching. But I have been, when I went through this process, I was in a long phase of spiritual being. And I just fully surrendered to God. I said, who do you want me to work with? Just send them to me.
And how did you receive those messages?
They would show up.
Okay.
Everything's a message. It's everything that's
Yes.
happening is within our own consciousness. And that's the thing where we like zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. We think that Archangel Michael is going to come out of the heavens on a unicorn with a lightning bolt
And
and
talk
like
to us.
hand us a document of like,
Oh, how I wish that would happen.
yeah, right. But everything is part of your experience. So when you're just going for a walk and a bluebird flies by,
Yes.
and you get an idea or a thought that comes into your mind that has something to do with a project that you're working on that
It just all
somehow
loops
that
together at
train,
that point.
there you go. That was it. That was the sign.
That's the message.
You know, whatever it is, but you're the interpreter of it. Sometimes it's more overt than others. Obviously, our
Yes.
names can be great with it. So I say all that too with my current state. I am so excited. I feel like I'm starting in some ways my spiritual being doing phase because I've had a lot of success with businesses and things of that nature, and I just let it all go. And now it's about getting to create again. I feel like a grizzled veteran and a wide-eyed rookie at the same time.
I love that.
So I have a program for men that is called the 12 that's going to be launching next month, and it's only for 12 men.
Okay.
So we're going intimate, deep, premium, full life transformation activation. There's another program that's going to be coming later in the fall for women, which is going to be a little bit more expanded. We're creating a educational community called Soultivation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot happening behind the scenes because that entrepreneurial side, that logic, pragmatic,
It's
like
coming on. The
ready
messages are
to
just hitting you right
let's
now.
build again. Let's
I
build
love
again.
that.
So for now, though, anybody can reach me on socials and just book some time. I have a link on my socials that they can book some time to drop in, and then we can explore the best way that I can support.
That's awesome. So I'll go ahead and once I post this podcast on YouTube, where it's going to be live, hopefully by tonight or tomorrow. Look, 5:55 on the clock. As soon as we end. But I'll go ahead and I'll post all your social links. I'll post your website and how everyone can reach you, just to make life a little bit easier for everybody.
That would be great. Yeah, there's a link on my socials.
Mm-hmm.
If you click that link, you
Yes.
can get, I have you can book time with me on my calendar,
Okay.
and you can download my free ebook about
Yeah.
time. So there's a few different things you can do there. But my real joy, I love working with people one-on-one.
Well, I'll tell you, Juan, as your father would say, um, I'm so grateful that I came across your content and that I was given the opportunity to speak with you today. This has been very educational for me. It's been very soothing to my soul. I've really enjoyed just talking to you. Just learning about your past and your accident and what you're doing today. Like I said, it really is admirable how you've chosen to flip the switch with everything that's happened in your life, and that's a beautiful way to kind of walk through life, or that's the only way that we should really be walking through life, right?
Every way we walk through life is a choice. And so we get to choose the way that is most preferable for us.
Yes.
I can't move my legs, but that doesn't mean that I'm paralyzed.
Right.
Paraplegia is an inconvenience, but paralysis is a state of mind. You don't have to
Yes.
be on a wheelchair to be paralyzed.
That's right. That's
So
right.
truly, what I help
That
people
is that is
do,
a great metaphor for what.
I mean, I think the work that I do, if I had to sum it up into one word, is that I help people become unparalyzed.
Yes. Yes. Well, I hope that anyone that's listening and is looking for some kind of guidance or just to speak to somebody, that they do reach out to you. I hope that this platform can facilitate that communication for anyone
You
that's
know, I
looking.
I appreciate that, and also want to reflect to you for answering the call. And you said, you know what, I want to start a podcast.
Yeah.
I want to speak to people that are on the spiritual path. I want to share this message. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to
And
help
I've learned so
others
much by doing
evolve.
this.
And so you're doing your part.
And can I tell you that in the creation of the podcast and just completely spinning it to where it's a spiritual podcast, I did that through from a selfish perspective because I needed the help myself. I was seeking for answers for things that I wasn't understanding or discommunicating with the world that I was living in. Everything was changing. My perspective with everything was changing. So, from a selfish perspective, I created something where I can help others because I think that, right, when we're positioning ourselves from a version of love, it's by helping others, right? We go back to what you always say, what you've been talking about, and what this podcast is really about. How
Mhm.
can we serve others? How can we help others?
Well, we reap what we sow. And are you familiar with the law of one?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's two paths. There's service to self and there's service to others. So there is a path where you could be all in on service of self because it's still part of the one. It's a very difficult path, and ultimately won't be sustainable as we continue to evolve upward, but you could do that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the expansiveness and the Christ consciousness and that service to others, recognizing that, we talk about you receive what you give. And a lot of people are worried about money, right?
Oh my God. This is a topic that comes up a lot in the podcast because I'm one of those, right? As a
Mhm.
single parent, the world is expensive, right? And there's always that fear factor where what's going to happen when I don't have money, where I can't pay the rent or I can't put food on the table for my daughter and myself and help my mother, right? And then it's like, it's just,
All
it's,
the
it's
all
a
those
train. It's a train that never ends at that point, and I'm driving myself crazy.
all of those, and none of those are real. Those might happen. You might become a multimillionaire. This might be the most popular podcast in the world. You might win the lottery. You
Right.
might find a bag of cash. We have no idea what's
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
None of us have any idea what's going to happen.
And you know what the beauty of that is that in the end, in retrospect, everything just always has a way of working itself out. We just have to fall into that trust mode where perspective, right?
All going to reflect
Optimism.
based on our energy and our transmutation. And think about this. So, like, here's the yin and yang, right? It's a circle. So pretend the yin and yang is in here, where my legs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always in balance, right? It's all about balance of duality. And people think about the line in the middle. But I've been in the contemplation of what is it to be the line on the outside?
Okay.
Hold it. So now something really negative happens, and it's like, right? The darkness has expanded, all these horrible things in my life. So we're swimming in this part. But in reality, our capacity has expanded. It has to be. It has to be in balance. We're just not perceiving this. We're not aware of this. But greater is the light that comes from the darkness. It's one thing when you win the lottery and can say, "Oh, thank you, God." Can you thank God after your house burns down?
You can.
You can. And which one of those gratitudes is going to have more power? It's from the dark. That's the transmutation. That's the work.
Right. My house burned down, but my family's still alive. I was able to get my pets out, right? Like
But
what's the perspective that you're going to view this catastrophe that just happened? It's just a piece of material possession that we have where
as
we can
difficult as it is,
and we can get a new one. We can get a new one.
or even if you can't, even if somebody died, even if you can't walk anymore, what can you find gratitude for? How can you generate love and gratitude within that experience?
Yes.
Because that only thing that exists is now. And so that is the energy you're putting out in the field. And what you put in the field is going to come back to you. And the thoughts that we have of, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of money and I can't take care of my kids and everything's so expensive and all that stuff is now seeding the field.
Right, right. We're
It's
planting that.
seeding.
We're planting that version of that reality
So
now.
what happens, so many of us would go through, I know you shared these things, but it's for so many people. That's the big thing. And it's understandable because of the tide is rising. And so all day long we're thinking these things and we're worried and I gotta do this and afraid. And so our thoughts, our energy creates matter. Our thoughts are energy. Thoughts become things. And then we sit down for 10 minutes and say, I am abundant. I am abundant. I am abundant. And it's like, how come it didn't work? It's like, no, you got it
That
inverted.
is so
Take 10
true.
minutes to say, oh my God, everything's falling apart. How am I going to do it? Oh gosh, let it out. And then the other rest of your
Flow,
time,
go
just
back into
keep
that
thinking,
flow
I have
state.
everything I
Yeah.
need. I'm abundant. Right? So the inversion. But here's a little tip for money specifically, and you can see how it would apply to everything. If and how do we put it into action? Because we want to lead with our actions as well
Mm-hmm.
and take the action like they say dress for the job that you
Yeah.
want,
Right. Show
right?
up. Mm-hmm.
So how does that apply to money? If you're worried about money, the best thing you can do is give some away.
Okay. You gotta go deep into detail with this one.
If if you won the lottery tomorrow and you had $10 million dollars and you never had to worry about money again, what would you do?
I would certainly I would help my family. I would think, right? I would help anyone that's in need. Maybe I would set myself up, my child up, right? Like I would start with my circle and then extend it outward, right? Open up a foundation. I don't know.
Okay, so let's say so you maybe open up a fund like that feels something aligned. And look, maybe you take some trips and you like
Yeah, I mean,
really good
I'd
food.
like to use it for myself as well.
Yeah, yeah, you do things you'd have, I don't think you'd buy a gold toilet, but like, you take your family on a nice vacation
Unless
and
you're Donald Trump.
maybe you'd get an upgrade, maybe you'd upgrade your car,
Yeah,
you'd have
sure.
really nice food, sure. And then, like you said, maybe, open up a foundation. Okay, what would the foundation be for? What's
um Helping children, maybe, women, young kids that are being, molested and trafficked. I
is
think
that something that's
I
on
feel
your
that that's something that speaks to me. Yeah,
so being
it's
able to help, so that's something you're like, man, if I had all this money, I could
oh,
open a
definitely. That's
foundation
something that I would definitely do.
and
Hmm.
I could help children who are being molested. Great. Okay. You know what? You could do that now.
I agree. I agree.
So that's the thing. Tony Robbins had a quote. It's great. He said, he's probably a billionaire, and tons of money, and has fed, his big thing is feeding.
Yes, right? Yeah, he feeds a certain amount of people where yeah, yeah.
And so he said, a lot of people tell me, well, yeah, of course it's easy for you to feed when you have $100 million of so easy to feed people. And he said, look, if you don't give away 10 cents when you have a dollar, you're never giving away 10 million when you have 100 million.
That's true. That is it. That's true. That's very true, right?
It's all energy.
Yeah.
It's all energy. So when you're feeling afraid that I'm going to run out of money, go give money, donate money to something that you love.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that.
You're showing the universe, I'm not afraid.
Okay.
This is something I actually got, I check in with Yeshua sometimes, become a beautiful teacher of just our connection. And I asked him about this exact thing because I was feeling afraid about money. And I still feel it sometimes. I've had a lot more we can go to. I never had any money growing up. We lost our house when I was a kid. I never knew what to do with money. I was afraid of money. And then I started a company in my late 20s that had tremendous success. And then I had a bunch of money and I was still afraid of it. And then I got divorced and paraplegic and got remarried to a pathological narcissist. All of these crazy things. And then all the money went away. And what I learned was I had people steal from me. I had bad investments. That I was never going to get out of my fear of money by God giving me money. The only way I could actually resolve my fear of money is by the money going away and me not being afraid anymore. We have an attachment. We say, I won't be afraid of running out of money as soon as I receive money.
Right. That is so true.
It doesn't
It's
work
the
that way.
it's the other way around.
I am not afraid of running out of money. And therefore, I now can receive money. It's that trust. And so, what Yeshua shared with me was the image of water. And do you think that water, like money, comes out of a bottle or out of a faucet? And if you think it comes out of a bottle, You're going to be scared. You're going to run out. You're going to hoard. It's going to be finite. But if you think it comes out of a faucet, you
It's never
still want to
ending.
be responsible about it.
Mm-hmm.
You still aren't going to leave the faucet running the whole
But you're
time.
never going to be without it.
You're not going to be afraid you'll be without it. And all of that comes back to trusting God's love and God for providing for you, which He is as an extension of Himself into form that we've been taught to perceive, not to trust ourselves, which creates the fear, which then propagates us not actually having the experience we desire when it turns out we're the creator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't it all very silly?
It's very silly. It sounds very simple. And that's why this is so important, right? What we're talking about, so that, I
We're
can,
bringing the
again,
simplicity back to it
yeah,
because it doesn't
breaking
have
it,
to be.
breaking it down, the way that you're breaking it down really makes it a little more logical for humans to understand at that point, right?
Exactly. Like, do the thing that you're most afraid of.
That's what you got to do the most.
That's where you got to lean in because it's within you.
That's where
That's
the
what's
healing
actually to be
starts.
healed.
Yeah.
That's where, now with that said, when I say about giving away money, it's not necessarily
Yeah, don't
saying,
go crazy.
some people do.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned Tony Robbins. I think it was the same discourse. He was down to like he literally zero in his bank account. And he gave $20 to a kid who was taking his mom out for a lunch date.
I heard the story.
So that was his story. And some people sell all their possessions. So you do what's right for you. But wherever you are, in whatever financial position, unless you're absolutely, completely destitute, and if you were, you're probably not going to hear this podcast. So just by the fact that you're listening to this podcast on your phone or on your computer, in your maybe in your house, but maybe in an apartment, but somewhere with electricity,
Right.
and
Look,
you
be
have a
grateful for
phone
all
bill,
those. Be grateful for all that, right?
you got $1 you could donate.
Yeah.
You absolutely do. You can send $1 to something that you care about, and you can let God know that you trust more is going to come and that you're here to serve.
Yes. Yes. Well, Ron, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. It's I again, everyone has so many questions about what we should do, what's the right thing to do, what's the path that I'm supposed to take, what's the answer, right? What's my purpose? It's the grand question that we all have. So, we need more teachers, right, to come out, and just communicators, and just people that are facilitating this topic a little bit more, so that it's just a little easier to understand, because it's not difficult. We complicate it, we
Yeah,
really complicate it. So thank you
exactly.
again. I really appreciate you
Yeah,
spending
thank you for the
your
time.
Sunday evening with me.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. I really appreciate what you're doing, and thanks for having the message or sharing the message and having me on to,
Yeah.
uh, you know,
So, for all of you that are tuning in or will be watching this episode later today or later this week, I want to thank you all. I want you to consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, and hitting the notification bell so that you never miss these amazing guests that are continually coming on more and more. It's at a point right now, Ron, where people are contacting me to be on the podcast,
it's beautiful.
and that's part of what I prayed for, what I asked for what I manifested, and it's happening, and it's happening in real time for me, and I'm seeing it, right? The further I kind of like let go and facilitate everything, it's just happening more and more. So, uh, thank you. Thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, and I'll go ahead and I'll link you up on everything as soon as I post it. I'll probably be posting it at this point tomorrow.
Okay, sounds
Okay?
good. Thank you so
So
much.
thanks again, okay? Have a great one.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.